for a woman who recently had a novel stem cell procedure done to relieve her hip arthritis, right? A woman with a novel stem cell procedure done to relieve her hip arthritis. Unfortunately, the procedure didn't work. Instead of relieving her hip arthritis, she just had inflammation for a couple of days, and the arthritis was as bad as ever. Now, your client claims the surgeon must have made a mistake, but the surgeon says that your client just was not a very good candidate for the procedure, and he told her that. So we need to try to figure out what's going on. And so we're going to do it in LiquidText. So when we start LiquidText here, I happen to be doing this on my iPad, by the way, but all these things work pretty much the same on a Windows desktop or Mac or whatever you want to use. So when you start LiquidText, you have all of your different projects here. Each project, of course, can contain a whole litany of documents, thousands of documents, pages and pages of notes, all the things you need for that project. It's meant to be a self-contained workspace. Okay, so in this case, we want to go to the McCaffrey stem cell case. And here we are, we've opened it up. And now let's go through the pieces of the LiquidText screen. Over here on the left, we have our document list, right? These are all the documents that are a part of the current project, and you see them over here, right? I've organized them into some folders. In this case, it's a pretty simple project. Next, we have the document reading area. This is where you see the document that you're currently working with. And you could, of course, view 2 or 3 or 4 potentially documents all side by side here at once, but in this case, we're just starting with one. And finally, continuing to move to the right, here we have the workspace. The workspace is your note-taking area. You can gather all of your notes, excerpts, connections, ideas from all the different documents that you're looking at, gather them and organize them here. In effect, this is where you can start constructing the argument that you're going to make, in this case, in court. And of course, just as you can have many documents, you can have many independent workspaces in the same project. Okay, so to begin with, right, the first question we have is, since the surgeon claimed that our client was not a good candidate for the procedure, we want to find out whether he's right. So we want to find out who is a good candidate for the procedure. So to begin with, I'll create a text box here, and we'll say, who is a good candidate? And so I've just created a text box here. I'll color it red and put it in the workspace. Okay, now let's go to my documents list here. And let's start by going to the regulatory bodies folder, and we'll go to the American Stem Cell Association best practices. You see, I click the document, it comes up here, and I scroll around, and pretty quickly I notice a very important line right over here. It says, most adults are good candidates for this procedure. Well, that's really important. I want to keep track of that, right? I want to use that as part of my argument. So instead of just highlighting it, where I'm going to pretty much lose it forever, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to take it and drag it out from the document into the workspace like this. And you see, now I can start gathering together different pieces of information. I'm mixing the little title heading that I wrote with this note. You see the little citation underneath it, and so on. Now, you also notice there's this big arrow on the left of this excerpt that I pulled out. That arrow is a link. Wherever I am, I can always click on this arrow and get right back to the source, always with one tap. So you're no more than one click or tap away from your context. Okay, well, that's great. But now I see over here, the text mentions there's a more detailed algorithm for who is and isn't a good candidate for this procedure in Figure 1. Figure 1 is a couple pages away, so I can scroll to it, or then I can scroll back. But that's starting to become difficult. I want to compare them. It's hard to do that on different pages. But in LiquidText, it's actually easy. All I have to do is I can just squeeze the document together. I can pinch it together like this. And you see, I can bring the text and the diagram up side by side. Now, if I happen to be using a touch screen, I can do this just by pinching the screen. If I'm doing this on a more traditional desktop device, I do this by holding Shift while scrolling the mouse wheel. So almost the same thing. So it looks like this diagram is going to be pretty helpful. So I'm going to take it here and just select it and pull it out into the workspace. Shrink it down a little bit, and we'll add it along with the rest of our notes here. Okay, that's great. So now I'll uncollapse my text here like that. Okay, so I have a pretty good sense now of who is and is not a good candidate. So let's find out if our client, Arlene McCaffrey, is a good candidate. So I'll go back to my documents list, and I'll go to her patient medical record like that. Okay, and here we have it. Here's her medical record. And let's take a look. So we see in her medical record, she has, just make the pen a little thicker and brighter here, red. We see in her medical record, she has diabetes, she has hypertension, and of course that infamous arthritis that started this whole thing. Now, if we go and take a look at the algorithm, what do we see? Well, we see she's under 65 years of age. We see she's not immune compromised. We see she has no history of carcinomas, but we see that she does have high blood pressure, which puts her in the closely monitored category. Well, that's pretty important. That suggests there might be some truth to what the surgeon was saying. So I want to keep track of that. I'll add another little text box here and say, our client is in the closely monitored category. Okay. So one of the things that I'm sure is going to come up in court is someone at some point is going to say, how do you know she's in the closely monitored category? How do you know that this was the right path to follow through the algorithm? And I'm going to really quickly need to be able to get back to this list of pre-existing conditions that our client has. I don't want to have to search around and fish this out. So I want to be able to find it quickly. So for that, I'm going to draw a line from this document over to my notes here. Now watch this. Look at that. I just drew a line, a live inkling between my document and my notes. And what this means, see, this line is live. So what this means is wherever I am, even in another document, I can always go select this link and it brings me right back to that point with our client's pre-existing conditions. This lets me find information incredibly quickly and basically take the set of relationships and connections and evidence behind my assertions and be able to cite it and connect to it effortlessly just by drawing a line. This is one of the things that really has a big impact on our users. Okay, so this is great. So we have a little bit more information. It looks like our client isn't a great candidate, but also isn't a terrible one. Let's try to find out a little bit more. So let's go on here and find out how the surgeon actually performed the procedure. All right, how the surgeon performed the procedure. And maybe we'll just label this green. Okay. Now to dig into this, let's go back to our documents list and let's go to the depositions. And we'll start with the surgeon's deposition transcript. See, and you see here, I have the deposition transcript. I've already highlighted and tagged the key steps the surgeon took. But the first thing I'd like to do then is understand how these steps sort of flow one into the other. What's the overview of how the surgeon performed the procedure? Well, the problem with finding an overview is it's spread over so many pages, it's kind of hard to see it just by skimming it. It's just by skimming the text. So with LiquidText, what I can do is I can go to highlight view over here. And with highlight view turned on, I can now pinch the document and you see all of the highlighted and tagged pieces of text come together like this. If I want a little bit more detail, a little more context around one of them, I can just squeeze apart to get the context and squeeze back together to get the overview again. So it lets you see all the important information together so that you can discover new insights based on the context and based on the overview. Okay, great. So now we're in a pretty good place. Let's start actually pulling out the steps the surgeon performed. So we see first, the surgeon took the stem cell culture and prepared it. And second, they prepped the patient for surgery. Well, there's a bunch of things to pull out here. So I can actually speed this up a little bit by just tapping auto excerpt, and you see it'll just pull this right out. So let's see, prepared the stem cell culture, prepared the patient for surgery, did a blood pressure check, performed the arthroscopic incision, inserted the dissolving joint spacer. But these next 2 points actually came before the dissolving joint spacer. So I'll make a little room here and I'll pull these out and rearrange them. And this is actually one of the great things about LiquidText. Because of the workspace, you can rearrange the important information. You can pull things out and arrange it in the form that makes sense for your needs rather than the needs of the author, for example. Okay, great. So insert the dissolving joint spacer. Let's see, remove the synovial fluid, applied the ICM matrix gel. That looks like it's important. They let the gel sit for 15 minutes. That looks very important. I'm just going to highlight that yellow. After that, they shaved off a small bone spur, applied the stem cell culture, and finally closed up the patient. Well, on the face of it, I don't see anything that suggests any problems encountered during the surgery, but maybe the surgeon didn't follow the procedure properly. So let's go back to our documents list on the left here. And let's go over to Galaxidrin product info. And we'll go to the product manual for the Galaxidrin stem cell treatment system. Scroll down here, and here we have an overview of the application process. And so let's just review it and see if it matches what the surgeon did. Well, there was patient pre-op, prepare the bone fascia, articular cartilage, prepare the joint, apply the ICM matrix gel, leave it undisturbed for 15 minutes, remove the excess, apply the stem cell culture, and then close up the patient. Well, on the face of it, it looks like the surgeon followed the procedure to the letter. So I'm really baffled about what could be wrong. But maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe there was someone in the clinical trials that had an outcome similar to our client, and maybe that'll give us some insights. So let's go back to our documents list here. And we see under regulatory bodies, we have phase 3 clinical trials for Galaxidrin. Let's take a look at that. Okay. And you see there's a lot of information here. But all I'm interested in is, again, is there anyone who was in the clinical trials who had a failure of the procedure along with some inflammation? So let's do a search for inflammation. To search for it, of course, I could just go to the search function here, but there's actually an easier way. Since we know that you're going to do a lot of searches when you use LiquidText, you can just start typing. And as you start typing, the app automatically brings up a little pop-up window with different choices for what you can do based on what you're typing, depending on your context. So in this case, we just typed a word, so it's giving us different ways we can search for that word. So let's search the document for inflammation. And you see it finds 5 results, but I'd really like to see those results together so I can get the overview. Well, just like I can do with highlights, I can just squeeze to bring all of my results together, just like this. This is one of my favorite features about LiquidText because it means I can effectively pivot a document on a word or a phrase. So now I can look through it and I can see at a glance that this result right here is talking about something with a failure of treatment. That sounds like the one I want to learn more about. So I'm just going to squeeze apart here and see all the context around that. Okay, now we can turn off search mode. So as I look at this, I see this actually does look like it's really going to help us. It turns out there was someone, some participant in the clinical trials who had something very similar to our client. There was a failure of the treatment coinciding with inflammation. And in that case, the administering surgeon made a mistake of applying the ICM gel for only 2 minutes instead of the indicated 15. Very interesting, very interesting. So maybe that happened in the case of our client as well. Well, I mean, nominally though, you see right here, the surgeon says he left it on for 15 minutes. And again, we can just click the link, get right back there, and we see surgeon claims 15 minutes. So I don't know, but you know what? I'm just going to highlight this red, this point that we pulled out from the clinical trials. I'm going to highlight it red, and we're just going to keep an eye on it. So what could have happened here? Well, maybe it's possible that the surgeon didn't recall correctly. Maybe the surgeon forgot, or maybe the surgeon even lied. So to find out, let's go take a look back at the depositions, and let's go to the lead nurse's deposition transcript, right? Let's go take a look at what she had to say. So we look through her deposition transcript here. Do we see anything that can give us some insights into what happened here? And for better or worse, the nurse concurs at exactly the 15-minute mark. They took the ICM matrix gel off. Well, unfortunately, the nurse and the doctor seem to be on the same page on this one. But maybe there's something else we're missing. Maybe there's some inconsistency between their two recollections that would help us here. I want to view what the nurse said and what the surgeon said together. So I'm just going to go back to the surgeon's deposition transcript here, and I'm just going to select show in parallel. I could also do this by drag and drop. And now I can see the nurse's deposition transcript and the surgeon's next to each other. So now let's take a look at these and see if there's anything interesting here. At first, no, but after a second, I do see something interesting. The surgeon mentions that 10 minutes after applying the ICM gel, they shaved off a bone spur on our client. Okay, well, the nurse says exactly the same thing after 10 minutes. But the nurse mentions something that the doctor forgot to mention, that after shaving off the bone spur, Dr. Feld flushed the debris out with saline. That looks like it could be very interesting because maybe spraying that saline in there in some way interfered with the ICM matrix gel. Maybe, I don't know if that's possible, but it's the best lead that we have so far. So the question is, well, before any question, the first thing is, this is a really important connection, right? because if this does turn out to be important later on, and let's say I'm discussing what the nurse said, I'm in court, opposing counsel says, well, you claim the nurse says that it was after 10 minutes, maybe it was really after 15. What did the surgeon say? I need to instantly be able to get the point that the surgeon actually agreed that it was after 10 minutes that they shaved off the bone spur. So I need to connect these two. Now, you remember before I could draw an ink link from one document, from a document into our notes. I can also create an ink link from one document to another. So I'm going to just take my pen here and draw an ink link. And you see now I've created another live link from the nurse's deposition transcript to the surgeon's. And so wherever I am, I can always tap this link here and get right back to the corresponding point in the surgeon's deposition transcript. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point is, since this could actually really be shedding some light on the case, I'm just going to take this excerpt here and pull this right out into my notes. Okay, that's great. So the next question is, do we have any reason to believe that spraying saline might be a problem for the ICM matrix gel? Well, I don't know, but let's go back to Galaxygen product info. Let's go to the product manual and see what it says. Well, it doesn't explicitly mention saline, but it does say that you're supposed to leave Galaxygen undisturbed for 15 minutes. So let's just pull that out here as well, because that certainly is part of the argument that we're constructing. Now, the next question is there any reason to believe that saline would count, that spraying saline would count as disturbing it? And I don't know, but let's take a look at the material safety data sheet for Galaxygen. Let's see if there's anything in there that would give us a clue about what's going on. So I look at the MSDS, and at first, I don't really see anything that looks particularly interesting, but then I think here's the point that can help us. Solubility in water, very high. Look at that. Let's pull that out for sure. So I think now we actually have a pretty solid argument, and I think we have a pretty good sense of what's going on. So let's add another little text box here, and maybe we'll make the font a bit bigger. Conclusion: the surgeon accidentally washed away the ICM gel after only 5 minutes rather than the indicated 15 minutes, which is known from the trials to cause failure of the procedure. Excellent. Okay, so I think we have a pretty strong case actually now. So one thing I'd like to do is, since this conclusion is very dependent on these excerpts that I pulled out, I'd like to indicate that, I'd like to show that. So I'm just going to draw ink links connecting these guys together. So you see ink links not only connect documents to notes or documents to documents, they can connect my notes to my notes. And so what it lets me do is, in effect, start to create a mind map in my workspace. So in this case, it's a pretty small one, but if it were larger, I could tap one end of any of these links to get immediately to whatever is on the other end. Okay, so now I think we're in pretty good shape. I'd like to go through and review the sources and the context behind these different notes I pulled out. And of course, as you've seen, that's very easy. I can always just tap these, the arrows to get there. One of the other great things about Liquitext is it's very easy to compare them side by side. So for example, I could actually select two of these arrows at the same time and view two sources at the same time, just by holding down both arrows. If I'm doing this on a desktop, I just click the arrows while holding Shift, particularly on a Mac. Okay, now the next issue is I want to take all of these great notes that I've put together here and be able to put these into a final linear form. For that, I need Microsoft Word. So how do I get from this to Word? Well, actually, we make it really easy for you. You can just go to the Send button up here and go right down to Notes Outline. In Notes Outline, we take everything that's in your workspace, all of your highlights, and organize it into a nice linear document that you can export and send right over to Microsoft Word. See, we can even just go to another app and send it right over there. Actually, we can, let's see if we can even show that. Here we are. Beautiful. And there we have it. Now, the other great thing about this the relationship between LiquidText and your other apps, especially Microsoft apps like Word, is that links work between the apps. So for example, let's say this critical point about Dr. Feld flushing out the debris with saline. I want to have an explicit link right to that in my Word materials. I can just copy a link, go right over to Word, and I think it's going to make us save a copy in order to edit it. Okay. And I can paste that link right in there. And so what this means is now, let's say I'm in a different document somewhere. I can select this link and it'll take us right back to LiquidText and highlight the item that the link points to. So LiquidText is designed to work really well with the other tools in your legal workflow. And finally, besides just exporting to Word, you can also export as a PDF. And so we can take your entire workspace with all the documents and everything and export them as a single large PDF bundle as well. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so with that, there's a couple other things I would just point out quickly about the app that are pretty powerful. One is sometimes you'll find that, let's say when you get, let's go back to our medical record here, you'll find that when you get a medical record, you'll get newer versions of it later on that have new pages attached to it. One of the great features that we added to LiquidText relatively recently is if you get a new version of a document that has additional pages, either added or pages removed, you can replace the old one with the new one, and the app will automatically move your annotations, links, and everything to the correct corresponding pages on the new document. Another thing I'll mention just as part of this quickly is we have a very extensive help system built into the app. So I was only able to go through, I went through most of the major features of it, but there's quite a bit more. But we go through those in a lot more detail in the in-app help. And we even have little videos showing how to use all of the features. I think this is actually a really great part of the product. Now, another thing I'll just show you is in the example I gave, again, I was on an iPad. You might be using it on an iPad, you might use it on Windows, you might use it on your Mac. But one of the things that we really love about the app is that it's designed to be used on all of these devices at the same time. So let me show you a brief demo of this. So we created our LiquidText real-time synchronization. The idea behind it is you might do some interactions, let's say on your tablet, where you can do freehand texting and things like that, pulling out some excerpts and things like this. And you notice that virtually instantly, the same changes will happen on your desktop device. Even though these are two completely separate computers, not just sharing a screen, these are two separate devices, but our real-time syncing lets you use two devices at the same time, right? So you can use your big screen desktop for things like organization, while using your tablet for what it's good for, which is, let's say, freehand writing, freehand texting. And the idea is you can basically use each device for the part of the workflow, for the part of your workflow that makes the most sense for it, right? So use the tablet for your freehand annotation, use the desktop for large scale comparisons and things like that. In this case, you're seeing, for example, a user creating an ink link on her desktop right there. And then over on her iPad, she can immediately follow that ink link to the same location. And so again, you can use whichever device makes the most sense for each part of the workflow as you're going through it. Okay, so let me stop there. Are there any questions?